Hey guys, it's Cass, and I'm here with my May wrap up. In the month of May, I read 11 books, which is only one less than last month. But also, last month, a couple of those were like mangas, and these are all just like normal books. I didn't read any manga or comics or anything like that this month. So, these are all books I was reading a lot this month. The first book I read this month was Unseelie by, I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Ivlys Houseman. I'm not sure how you say her first name, but it's here on the screen. This book was so good. I really enjoyed this one. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. I just really like Faye and like those kind of characters. Also, the character is mechanically autistic. So it was just a great read. The author is also autistic, so like she gets it. Yeah, what I wrote in my Goodreads was, God, I don't even know what to say. I loved this book so much. There's so much unfinished business that the fact that I have to wait for the next one is just absolutely gut-wrenching. I don't know how on earth I'm supposed to wait. Yeah, I still feel that way. There was just like so much stuff like kind of left unresolved at the end of the first one that I just like needed to know immediately, but obviously I have to wait. Which the author did announce the name for the sequel, which is called Unending, I'm pretty sure. And we're gonna get the POV from the main character's twin in it, and I'm super excited. It's like both of their POVs. But my next book that I read in the month of May was Shadow and Bone by Leah Bardugo. I really enjoyed this book. I was kind of wary going into it because I had heard like not great things about it. But honestly, I loved this. I loved this whole series, which I'll get into in this video. But yeah, I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. Looking back on it, I probably would change my rating to a 4, but I still like really enjoyed this book. So I'm just gonna like leave what I like put down, maybe like a 4.5. What I wrote was I literally wrote, at first I was going to rate this a 4 just because the middle part was a little repetitive, but the last bit of it was so good it had me thrashing around on my couch while reading it. Yeah, I read this book in one day, in practically one sitting. I just like couldn't put it down, honestly. Which that was like the first book I had read in a while that I just like read straight through like that. Like I said in the like what I wrote, it is like a little repetitive in like the middle of the book. It does kind of just like, it's just like her day-to-day life, and she does like the same thing every day, you know, like she's like in training and like going to school and like or whatever it is. So it's just like kind of that like every day. Like obviously there's like different things going on, but like that's like the gist of it. So it is kind of repetitive, but I still just really enjoyed this book. The third book I read this month was Siege and Storm, the second book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. I also rated this 5 out of 5 stars. Looking back on it, I would probably also rate this like a 4.5, a 4 star. Probably more of a 4, I would say. But I'm not sure because I just really love the characters that are introduced in this one. What I wrote down was, the series is getting me worked the F up. I was quite literally screaming about how stupid people were and what was happening for the last like 5 chapters of this book. I honestly don't understand why people don't like these books. Yes, they are YA, and a lot of YA books have the same tropes and seem very similar, but these books really got me in my feels. I will say I'm seeing a pretty common thing in these books where the middle can be a bit repetitive and kind of boring, but I like that because it makes me feel like I'm actually in it and living in it as well. You know what? Yes, I still wholeheartedly agree with this. I feel like when books kind of take it slow and you are kind of just like following them along, it's like you are living it more. So maybe I wouldn't change my rating. I'm not sure, but I really enjoyed these books. Like, I'm obsessed with them, honestly. The fourth book I read this month was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, I talked about this book a little bit in my last video because it was on my list of books I would love to reread again. And I did listen to the audiobook for this one. I think this is the only one that I didn't like read the physical version of this month. This book ruined me. I also rated this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Literally, I rated all of these 5 out of 5 so far. There are a couple later on that I didn't, but I just like really liked what I was reading this month. And I'm pretty lenient when giving ratings, which I really should work on, but I just am. I like what I like, and just get over it. What I wrote was, literally had no idea what I was getting myself into when I started listening to this book, and what the fuck. That was quite literally the best thing I've ever read. I sobbed so much the last bit of the book. It was so beautiful and also hurt so much at the same time. I'm in love. And I still so wholeheartedly agree with that. Just like, this book like changed something in me. I literally had no idea what this book was about before I started listening to it. I had just seen that it was really popular, and I was wanting to like crochet something, and I was like, I just like want to like listen to a book. Like, I want to read, but I also want to crochet. So that's what I did. I picked out that one and I started listening to it, and I could not stop listening to it. Like, I literally had to force myself to stop at one point because it was like 1 or 2 a.m. I think it was like more like 2 or 3 a.m. and I had to finish it the next day. And jumping back for my 5th book that I read this month, to the Shadow and Bone trilogy, I read Rune and Rising by Leah Bardugo, which is the last book in the Shadow and Bones trilogy. I really liked this one. I almost want to say it was my favorite, but I just really enjoyed I honestly really liked the second one, I think, just because of a certain character that was introduced. I think that's why I also like this, because he is also he's not in the first one. So if you know, you know. I love him. I don't know if I said this already, but I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. See, I just said that it was probably my favorite, and in this review, I said this was probably my least favorite, which is kind of insane. I guess now that I've had time to sit with it, because I read the Swords at the beginning of the month, I literally said, I loved this trilogy so much. This was definitely probably my least favorite, but I couldn't rate it less than a 5. I was sobbing so hard towards the end just for it to play me like that. I really enjoyed the ending and the after, seeing how their lives were. But I guess now that's so funny that I wrote that this was probably my least favorite. This one did take me like a few days to finish. I read the first 2 books in one day. Like, I read Shadow and Bone all in one day. The next day I read all of Siege and Storm. And then it took me a couple days to read this one. I think it was more so I was just like getting burnt out a little bit on reading since I had done so much the last 2 days. And also I think I just like had stuff going on. Really enjoyed this book. I really recommend this series. I just don't think that it's probably for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. My roommate's been reading it and she has not been liking it as much as I did. Like, she's been rating them like 3 stars each. I read all of those physically besides The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I borrowed all of those books so far. None of them were like my copies because I don't own them. My 6th book I read this month was The Merciless Four: Last Rites by Danielle Vega. This is the last book in the Merciless series. These are the other 3 I rated this a 3.5 stars. This was definitely my least favorite of the 4, even though it's been years since I read the other 3. I just thought the beginning was boring and I just didn't enjoy the story as much as the other ones. Was still really good and not expecting that ending as usual. I really enjoyed these books. Like this series was good. This is like the only horror series that I've really read. I started reading it just because at the time I was still in high school and I was really like into booktube and was watching a bunch of booktube videos, and I saw a bunch of people talking about the first one, and the first one was so pretty. Like the cover is like this pink, like it feels like an old book kind of, and then the edges are like the like jagged edges, which I love. But this one was definitely my least favorite. I just did not enjoy the story like the other ones. I would say probably the first or the second one is my favorite in this series. The last two just weren't as good. The next book I read this month was my first classic read of the month. It was Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay. I did not like this book. I rated it a 2 stars, not even a 2.5, just a 2. The reason I picked this book up was because I went thrifting for books one day and I saw this and the back intrigued me. So I was like, yeah, I'll get it. It's like $1. But this book was just fucking boring. The back of it just like, the synopsis like makes me think that it's gonna read more like a like thriller mystery type book, but it wasn't that. Let me read what I wrote. I put, this book was just boring. I thought it was going to read more like a mystery novel, but really it was just the events that happened after the girls went missing, which were just boring. The only bit I found kind of interesting was toward the end in the last 2 or 3 chapters. Even then, it wasn't anything to write home about. So, yeah. Like I said, the reason I even rated it 2 stars was because the ending was kind of interesting, but I think it was more interesting because the rest of the book was so boring. So the next book I read this month was a reread, and that is The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan. So how beat up this book is. So I first read this book when I was in going into 7th grade. This was like our summer reading book, and I loved this book. You can tell this book has been with me a lot of places. I would just flip through it every now and then after I'd read it, because I loved this book. This was like one of the first books to really get me interested in reading. But I had never read the other 2 books in the trilogy, so I wanted to read the rest of it. So I reread this because it'd been literally so long since I had read it and I needed a refresher. So I read this and I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as like the first time I read it, but I was also like 12 at the time, and obviously this is like a older kids book, but it is like 500 and some pages long. It's pretty big, but I liked it. I'll tell you what I wrote about it. I said this was a reread and I really enjoyed it. It did take me a while to get through, but I think that's just because I had read it before and I was getting kind of bored, but not really at the same time. So I don't know. I had a lot of fun reading it and fell in love with these characters all over again. I forgot a lot of the things that happened since it had been so long since I had read it, so it was almost like reading it for the first time in some parts. I enjoyed reading it with my 22-year-old brain compared to my 12-year-old brain, because I was able to really cling onto the detail better than I was able to then. I'm excited to continue on with the trilogy, though I won't start the next one right away. Yeah, I did really like it. I wish that the series was more talked about, because I feel like, you know, obviously Rick Riordan's most popular series is like the Percy Jackson series and like all of those connecting to that universe. And I just think this series is This trilogy is kind of slept on. It's kind of slept on, honestly. I just think that a lot of people just aren't as interested in ancient Egyptian mythology, like ancient Greece mythology, Greek mythology. Oh my god, I am struggling with words. We're just not as interested in ancient Egyptian mythology as ancient Greek mythology. So I just think that's honestly what it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe they just don't like this book, but I do, and that's all that matters. The next book I read this month was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is the cover I have. This was the first book I've ever annotated, and I annotated the fuck out of this one. Like, I really did. Like, so much. I had so much fun annotating this. This makes me want to annotate all of my books, which I kind of have been starting to do. But like I said, I haven't really been reading as much the past, I don't know if I did say this. I haven't been reading as much the past like week and a half because I started my new job and I've just been like focused on that and I've been too tired to read. But I'm hoping to get back into it because I miss it a lot. Now, I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. I'm not sure if I said that yet. I'm keep getting like sidetracked. This book was so beautiful. Of course, I already knew the story, but being able to relive it again through the book while annotating it was amazing. This was the first book I've annotated, and I will definitely be doing it more. It made me connect with the book so much more and made me appreciate it on another level. And I still 1000% agree with that. I will say, what makes it a little bit easier to get into classics if you're like kind of nervous about that, because I'm not genius. But honestly, what helps me so much is while I'm like reading, I'm also listening to the audiobook. So I have the audiobook and I just like read along with it. And it just makes me like for it to fully soak in to my brain. That helps me a lot. It can help if you're also like that. So I recommend doing that if you want to get into classics, because honestly, it's worth it. It's so much fun. And I really did annotate the fuck out of this. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, I loved it. The next book I read this month was Babel by R.F. Kuang. I borrowed this from the library, so I don't have it. But this book, I can't even explain to you what this book did to me. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. I don't think you even needed that. I think you could just tell by my reaction when I even said that. I wrote, this book is so beautiful. This book is so heartbreaking, devastating. I truly can't put into words how this book has quite literally altered my brain chemistry. This was literally the best book I've ever read. R.F. Kuang is an actual genius. Her mind is one that should be rewarded constantly. I wish I could put into words just how amazing this book is, but I just urge everyone to read it and find out for themselves. And I really do think everyone should read this book. It could be harder to understand for some people, possibly. I still feel like this is a pretty accessible book, but if you just have trouble like concentrating on things like I do, I once again recommend listening to the audiobook with it. That's what I did. It helped me so much. Book changed my life, honestly. It was just so amazing, and I just think that everyone needs to read this book. I just like don't even know what else to say. R.F. Kuang's a genius. That's all. The last book I read this month is another classic, and it is The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, if that's how you say it. I do not know. It's French, and I am not French. It's like the same type of cover as the Pride and Prejudice one. It's the like same collection. I really love the orange and the blue on this book. I think it's really pretty. I really enjoy it. Didn't enjoy this book that much, so I rated it a 2.5 stars. I did also annotate it. Oh my god. I annotated it with like pretty colors. I just had normal tabs for Pride and Prejudice, but I finally got some other ones, so I was able to like match them a little bit to the cover. Obviously it's not exactly, but yeah. You can tell that mostly the same two colors were used, which I had 5 colors, but the 2 I used most were character details and plot points, which means that there just wasn't a lot that I actually really liked or invoked emotions in me. So what I wrote was, I didn't enjoy this book too much. I didn't really like the way it was written, and I found the characters to be annoying. I did enjoy some of the stuff at the end when the story was getting a bit more fast-paced. I just think the characters drone on for too long and for no reason. I did still enjoy some aspects to the book, but overall I wouldn't put myself through reading it again. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. I really do think that this story is better in like the movie musical format. I think what really like drives home this story is the music, the soundtrack. The book is just boring, honestly. I did not enjoy it. I did like read it pretty quickly, but I think it was more for the sake of trying to get through it, and also because I'm annotating it. I feel like when I'm annotating books, it makes me get through it quicker because I want to annotate. I like to like look for the things and like highlight it and underline and write and put any of the tabs in. Like that's fun for me. I just yeah, not great. I hate to not say I don't recommend it, because this could be for someone who really likes it. I've had a lot of people say that they did like this book, especially if they were really into music and things. But I just didn't. I just thought it was boring. Yeah. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of May. I think I did really good. That was pretty successful. Yeah. Currently reading 2 books. One is The Throne of Fire by Rick Riordan, which is the second book in the Red Pyramid series. I am trying to get through it. I'm kind of struggling a little bit. I'm like almost done with it. Like I could finish it today if I just sat down and read it, or listen to the audiobook or whatever. And the other book I'm reading is The Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, which is the first book in that trilogy. And yeah, I'm really liking it. I haven't really got too far into it. And I am annotating it as well. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this book. How many books did you guys read this month? Any number of books is okay as long as you're reading. What was your favorite book that you read this month? If you want to see my reviews sooner, I do post them on Instagram and Goodreads, and I have both of those linked down below. And then I'll probably have my Instagram popped up here. You can follow me on there, and on Goodreads we can be friends. That's it. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed it. I will